I was always was as a kid fascinated by Wyatt Earp and Eliot Ness. The very first thing they did with Eliot Ness was they based a two-parter on Desilu Playhouse, based on his book about Capone. And it was one of those things where lightning struck. It was like everybody was talking about that series. Every school kid was talking about it. So right away, they started doing the Untouchables TV show, and they did a combination of doing real for a long time anyway. They did a combination of doing real criminals. They used Frank Nitti a lot from the Capone mob, but they would do Mad Dog Call and you just a ton of the real criminals, real gangsters, the real mob guys, and but Ness was not involved in real life with hardly any of them. So it was this weird combination of they're doing reality stuff with turning Eliot Ness basically into Dick Tracy. And of course, Dick Tracy was actually based on Eliot Ness, which is something I found out by questioning Chester Gould.
Wow.
But Eliot Ness became kind of like very similar to Wyatt Earp, and they became in our culture two hot button subjects because there were all kinds of books and things done saying, well, Eliot Ness wasn't a big deal, Wyatt Earp wasn't really a big deal, and so there's a lot of revisionist history about those two. And what happens is they overreacted to how famous they got in the culture, and you could forget what they really did. And Ness had a very interesting life, a lot of it not in Chicago, most of it in Cleveland, and of course, uh, Wyatt Earp had a extremely interesting life and was involved in all kinds of stuff. So I wrote about him in a book called Black Hats. So I always had kind of a fascination for who were the historical figures that fed our popular culture. Definitely, Wyatt Earp fed the lawman, the Western lawman.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what figure, and you might have an idea what figure, cowboy figure, would have fed the cowboy image, because that's a separate thing from the lawman. The lawman is really an urban, even though it's a little town, maybe Dodge City, but it's still urban.
Mhm.
But the cowboy, the Red River kind of thing, that's a different kind of hero.
Yeah.
So, but definitely Wyatt Earp fed that myth, and definitely Eliot Ness fed the the crime besting. Now, who's a more famous real life detective in American history than Eliot Ness?
What do you think about the De Palma film?
Well, De Palma is one of my favorite filmmakers, um, and I think the film is very watchable. But I think the Mamet script is horrible. I was actually offered the Mamet script to novelize it, and it was with a company that I had two books already written that hadn't been published yet, but they had bought about Eliot Ness in Cleveland in his years as the police commissioner, essentially the public safety director of Cleveland, and they said, if you would novelize it, because I was doing the novelizations at the time, if you would do the novel of the Untouchables movie, we could tie it all in. And I should have, but I didn't because I didn't like the script, and I couldn't see how I could take this incredibly inaccurate script, turn it into a novel that would lead into my very accurate Eliot Ness novels. So if I had it over again, I'd probably just do it as a commercial thing that would help the other two books. But it's a terrible script. I mean, it has a couple of really good lines in it. The thing about that's the Chicago way. That's a great little speech. But he also has Mounties chasing bootleggers when you went to Canada because it was legal in Canada. So why are the Mounties chasing bootleggers? He also changed, and he changed juries in the middle of a trial. Now, historically, the juries were switched, but at the beginning of the trial, how do you change a jury in the middle of a trial? You can't. You have to start over. So anyway, it was sloppy. And on the last page of the script, it said, that Eliot Ness had, Eliot Ness died, and then there was like a line and then an asterisk. Have somebody look this up. And I'm like, how much are you getting paid for doing this script? I hated it. I hated the script. But De Palma kind of doesn't know how to make an uninteresting movie. I love Phantom of the Paradise, for example.
Yeah.
I love Obsession. I love Carrie. I mean, he was and is a great filmmaker. So, but you said it earlier. Story counts.
You've given me a lot to think about here because I love the Untouchables. But I think
I own it. I own it. I like it as a movie.
What I love about it is the visual language of it and
Oh yeah.
the grandeur. I mean, just think about the last shot of the movie is they walk out, they're on the street, and then it's like this big crane shot that just looks, just ascends into the sky of Chicago. It's got a lot of mythological, larger
See,
than life.
I can't watch him. I can't watch Ness throw Frank Nitti off a roof.
Yeah.
That that's a bridge too far for me.
See, you have all this knowledge about the source, about the truth that I don't have.
And that's the problem. That's the thing I do resent is when a movie rewrites the history and misinforms people,
Mm-hmm.
because there was plenty of good stuff to do with Frank Nitti that you didn't have to make stuff up. That's a lazy screenplay. That's a guy who was asked to write an Untouchables screenplay, and he just wrote one. And it has good stuff in it. I mean, that speech that Sean Connery gives is a honey. I'd love to have written that speech. The speech I'm talking about. He,
Yeah.
forget exactly what the cadence is, but it ends up with saying it's the Chicago way. So
It's one of the most quotable movies of the 1980s. You've done your duty, go home and sleep well. And then,
yeah.
what are you prepared to do?
And remember, I was looking at the screenplay, not the movie.
Yeah.
Because what they
Yeah.
don't know about novelizers is we never saw the movie till we went to the movie.